I'm 90% of the way through a burp here. I'm trying not to make a loud noise straight into the mic. It's interesting how, you can go your whole day without really burping at all, but the instant you have to stream, I think that's pretty normal. Seen a lot of streamers and YouTubers who suddenly burp a lot right at the beginning of their stream, and then they're perfectly fine after that. Must be the tension. Don't know. Streaming, game dev. Doing. I think I'm doing hand IK stuff. I'm a little bit sniffly today due to the uncharacteristic warmth, and it is bringing out all that mold. So, pardon me if I'm a little bit sniffly. Hopefully, it won't be too annoying. All right. Now that I've got that out of the way, so in the past couple of episodes, we've worked on getting our life to feel lifelike. We put in fish and plants and stuff. I think it's time for us to switch gears and work on the mission and mission interactions, the part of the game that's actually a game. Right now, we've got a very basic setup where when we touch something, it glows and we can click on it. We're basically just going to spend the day polishing that and burping. Why do I have so much random coin on my desk? I don't need you, pennies. All right. So, those pennies were covered in dust. So, basically, this glowing line that leads us to the next location, what we need to do is polish what happens when we get there and all that jazz. The first thing I want to do is make it so that when the dialogue pops up, it doesn't require us to press E. So if I would come over here and click, you can see how we get this dialogue. And then it just waits until we press E. There's no reason for that. I'm going to make it a right click. So let's start with that. Mifa says, the game finally, yay. Well, I can't say that this game is going to be full of, deep, interesting gameplay. The whole point is that the missions are... the missions tie the scenery together, and the events keep it exciting. As the theory, at least. So, it's not like I'm gonna be letting you build spaceships or anything. Thinking about doing an undersea construction game next, just because undersea construction is so interesting. But I'm getting called back to spaceships as well. The next game's definitely going to be a construction game of some kind. I just have to finish this first. That might take another 8 months. Who knows? We'll see if we can get it to work. So here you can see we're using this talking head script. If we wanted to, we can just right-click on that and tell it to go find it. Was it Alt F12 or something stupid like that? Control F12? There it is, Control F12. So there's our talking head. The talking head script pops up any of the characters in the game, which is right now the buddy, but it will quickly expand to include your crew on the ship and stuff like that. And the basic idea is that it spits up that thing you saw. But the question is, exactly what are we looking at here? So the talking head is diving dialogue, buddy.say, talking head, buddy, say, here it is. So there's something called a dialogue box, which is diving dialogue. So we have to go and look for the diving dialogue. Control F12. There we are. So this is the actual dialogue box, including the canvas. And basically, we right now wait until the player hits E. But you can see how it's not hard-coded in here. The thing that we're doing is we're waiting for a get button down dialogue. So what we can do is we can simply add mouse 2 to get button dialog. We can also change that to, check for mouse 2, but I'd like the player to have some more options. There are still some players working with only one mouse. I'm actually not sure if that's even true anymore, but it feels like it is. That's not the right place. I'm not sure where the there it is. So if we look, it should be down at the bottom, dialog, positive button E. We can also make that positive button like mouse 1 or mouse 2. I'm not actually sure how to write that. If we take a look at Fire 1 and Fire 2, you can see that it's mouse space 2. How strange. All right, that's fine. So there we are. And now we should be able to get away with using right click instead of E, but we also can use E. And what I'll do, I'll go track down the prefab we're using, dialog canvas, pop that into the scene, and then just take a quick look at the prompt here. It should have a text box in it that says press E. I'm going to change that to say right click. And then we're going to go ahead and save that change. How do we save the change? Does it automatically save the change nowadays? No. There's like a drop down somewhere. Apply all. Wow, that's really hard to find. The changes to the prefab system have just really not been great. That's fine. Let's just double check that that worked, and if that sort of basic thing worked, maybe we'll count our brain as warmed up. The next thing to do is probably to change this holographic material. It's pretty old, and it's not really very suitable. But there's a lot of things about it that we have to change. One of the things we have to change is how we actually get close to it. Right click is not working. Okay, so mouse 2 is actually the middle mouse button, which is a little odd. Did I type mouse 3 on accident? No, I typed mouse 2. Huh. Well, we'll put in mouse 1. I thought mouse 1 was the left click. Maybe mouse 0 is a left click on this system? Let's find out. Mouse 1 is right mouse, says MeFuzz. That's good. At least I know that it is something relatively easy to fix. Yeah, so right click works. Hooray! Alright, so let's go ahead and create a new holographic material for our holographic interfaces, and also create a new check on when we're going to actually focus on them. So right now we have an interface check system, which shoots a little dart from the face of the player, and if it hits something nearby, it decides that that's what we're going to try and interact with. I think that's probably okay. We just need to tweak it so that it doesn't suck. The other thing we need to do is take a look at this holographic projection. Right now it's using the highlightable shell, which if we open up in our shader editor of choice, you can see that this is a transparent cutout. We can do this because it's an unlit thing, but this is really suboptimal. I was testing some stuff out. I was trying to get it to work, and it was really garbage. So what we're going to want to do instead is make it obviously holographic. So we're going to rename this to holographic highlight old. And then we're going to create a new one. I think we'll just throw this whole thing away. It's really basic, and there's no reason for us to reuse it. So go down into FX or holographic here. Create a new material. We'll call this holographic. Nope, sorry. New shader. Is there an unlit? Yeah, there it is. Holographic. Highlightable. The thing is, I think that there's a lot of shaders in the wrong place. Of course, that's shaders that we're probably going to delete in the long run, but we still have to work it out. So if we look in the FX section, for example, we've got a hollow indicator, stencil map, wobbly segment. I don't know where the holographic old is. Do you think it's this guy? No. It's in machinery. And you can see it's called holographic highlight. I'm going to go ahead and rename that holographic highlight old because that's the name inside of the file. But up here in effects, we now have up here in holographic, we now have our new holographic setup right here. So you can see that this is an unlit shader, meaning that it only has one value, frag color. But that's a legacy unlit. We can also go to surface and then turn off lighting, which instead of giving us that, gives us this, which is a little bit more in tune with what we need for a couple of reasons. First off, we can do some tessellation to make it ripple. We could also do some fun stuff involving opacity, but first we have to switch it out for the alpha test. And you can see that we immediately get an opacity and an opacity mask. We're going to be using a dither here. I'm not actually sure we want a dither. Let me not use a dither. We're not going to be using a dither there. We are going to want a texture. So here's going to be our albedo texture. We're not even going to call it an albedo texture. We're going to call it a sprite. Because that's really what it is. It's just a layer. Let's call it a layer, layer 1, and then we're going to have a layer 2 because we're going to need both. And what we're going to do is we're going to have one layer for like the backdrop. We'll go ahead and name it that, backdrop. And we're going to have one layer for the foreground. And we're just going to combine them, so it's not that big a deal. And the way we're going to combine them is we are simply going to lerp from A to B based on the alpha of A. Then we can tint, so let's get ourselves a color. Do you think we should tint the background and the foreground separately? I kind of like the idea of having flat one-color holographic displays, so we're going to go ahead and not do that. Let's go ahead and just default to a blue. So we're going to just multiply these together. Shtaboom, shtabam. That's going to be our emission. We're going to go ahead and use the alpha for the opacity. So we're going to drag this out. Use a break into components and drag that alpha in as the opacity mask. And that should be all we need to get started. Let's go ahead and save this. Close that down. This is the old model here. We're just going to go ahead and use the same material. It's called highlightable shell. I believe it's in machinery. So let's grab this highlightable shell. Let's select it first, I guess. No, don't select the shader. There it is. Select the material. It's in materials. Great. Drop it in holographic. Clean this crap up. And we're just going to switch this out from holographic highlight old to holographic highlight. No, that's sand puff. Holographic highlightable. There it is. So this is what we have now. And it might look a little bit transparent due to the way that the gizmos are being drawn, but it's not. It is 100% opaque. If we wanted to make it transparent, we could. I don't think I actually want to, but I can always change my mind later. Anyway, let's choose some textures for our backdrop here. I don't believe we have any really good holographic textures. It's just not something that we've worried about in the past. So let me go ahead and give you Phoenix Wright while I open up my art program, and we can get ourselves some holographic textures. Do 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 do. Sorry, I'm just directing it to all of the correct places and trying to get it to work. So this is going to be backdrop 01. There we are. That should work. We'll go ahead and bring it back. Hooray! This is backdrop 01. As you can tell, it's a beautiful backdrop. It's also not what we're going to be using. So the holograms show up normally as a canvas element, but in this case, they are not a canvas element. They are a mesh. That means we can't use 9-slicing. 9-slicing is a really easy way to create background elements, and it's just not available for us right now. So when we make the backdrop, we have to decide what sort of ratio we want. This is a 1-to-1 ratio. It's 1024 by 1024. That's probably not what we want normally, but it probably is what we want in this case, because for this, we're not really distinct on what the backdrop and foreground are. They're just supposed to be like generic hologram looking things. So we're going to go ahead and just create some kind of switched up little angles. And that's all we're going to really want to do here. So sorry, I can't actually see what I'm doing. There we are. There we are. Just so this is like very, very primitive ways of doing things. This is what I do when I don't actually know how I want things to look, and I'm just kind of faking it. But that's okay, because we can always come back and edit the whole picture as many times as we want. So, it's better to make a bad stand-in and then improve it than to not make any stand-in at all. So you can't refine your visual if you don't have enough of a stand-in to know how things are going to look. So we're just going to get ourselves a nice fat pen and block it in with white. Yoink. And then that's going to be our backdrop 01, like so. So we're going to just hop into our material again, drop in that backdrop 01 that we just created. Shtaboom. The backdrop is, it is transparent, but as you can see, it's not transparent here. And the reason for that is simple. There's actually no transparent texture currently defined. So it's presuming that this is like a flat white. I guess we're going to go ahead and create just a really, really basic transparent texture, which we can do by selecting the uppermost pixel and then cutting to it and then saving that as a transparent image. So if we do that, we should be able to have the overlay be that transparent image. And there we are. So what I'm thinking, we can change the cutoff as we move through the system. And what I just created is a system that has an absolute edge. You can see how the edges are completely precise. They're these really sharp edges. But what we can do is we can create duplicates of this layer. And each of these duplicates can have itself set to a lower transparency and have itself expanded. This isn't quite how I want to do it. I think a better way to do it would be to paint with a soft brush. Yeah, let's go ahead and do that. We're going to just paint with a soft brush instead. So if I were to delete these, there it is. Instead of using the select brush, we are going to just paint on a straight line with a soft brush. This might be a little too soft. Let's use the hard soft brush. Unfortunately for us, there's really no... the one problem with this is that it's quite challenging for us to create a straight line ruler. I've never really figured out how to do it in this program. I actually have to create a perspective ruler and then use that, but that's so stupid. There should just be a way to do it. The problem is that that's not a perspective ruler. Something went horribly wrong. That I must have created a different ruler. I must have used a symmetry ruler. But if I use like a linear ruler, for example, like this, and I create this nice linear ruler, you think that would let me drive straight into it, right? It only works for that one spot. What's up with that, right? So it was suggested by Mifaz that I just use a blur. Yeah, that's not a bad idea. The problem with it is I don't know if it's going to fill in the gaps properly. And it ends up weakening the... Now, I think it's better to try again. But basically, the linear ruler is completely crap because it doesn't actually let you use that as a... it doesn't let you use it as a ruler all across the page. It's just like that one place. But other than that, it just gets ignored. See that? So it's really weird that they don't just offer you a way to lock your brush strokes into a horizontal and vertical. There doesn't appear to be a key combination that does it either. It's my one big annoyance with this program. So just use a perspective ruler instead. And see if we can get that going. The problem is, yeah, as I expected, the perspective ruler is going to end up using the perspective of the flat, untilted system. It's really obnoxious. This shouldn't be this hard, and it's not this hard. It's just this hard because I can't figure out a good way to do it. So here's a guide. Will the guide do what we want? No, of course not. I think that's just a purple line. I guess we'll use a perspective ruler with the idea being that our perspective will actually be this alignment, and that's just what we're going to do. Let's try it. So we're going to use a nice fat brush here, and then we're just going to shoot. Nope. That's a little too fat. That's not as dense as it should be. Punch that up. There we are. And then we can just double it down. That might be a little bit too doubled. Save that. So that should be pretty dense. And you can see that there's only a couple of places where the opacity is low enough to get through there. But here's the thing. What we did is we didn't put in the float value that we need. So this is going to be a glow. Glow will range from 0 to 1. And that will also modify our alpha. So down here you can see this alpha. We can simply make that alpha multiply by our glow. Fucking connect. Fuck. There we go. So what that means is that as we turn on the glow, it appears. You can see how the opacity is apparently very low by default. 0.5 is... Yeah, so our problem right now is our mask clip value is 0.5, which means that if our glow is anywhere below 0.5, it stops happening. So our mask clip value is going to be 0.01. That way, when we start it up, it's going to... that's not going to work either. So if we multiply it by glow, then we're lowering it towards 0. But if our mask clip value is low, then we're not going to have to lower it very far before it starts to get in trouble. You can see how it maxes out pretty quick. I'm not sure that this is the right way to do it, but this isn't too shabby. That's roughly how I want it to seem. Not really sure yet whether or not this is even vaguely the right approach, but the big change here is that I'm no longer using a transparent material, and I'm no longer doing whatever I was doing with the shaded material for a hologram. That was weird. Let's go ahead and create a version of this that is flipped. Oh, cancel. And basically what we're going to do with that is we're going to make it the overlay. Boom. These both need to have alpha is transparent. I'm not sure why that's not the default. Anyway, now what we should get is a banded appearance. Yeah, see? Zero. So I don't think I want it to ever get 100% full because the 100% full value is opaque. I won't be able to actually see what's inside. I think I need much thinner bands. See, I was thinking I needed thicker bands, and I think that was wrong. I think I need thinner bands. So let's go ahead and give it another shot. I wonder if I should just paint a grid and then tilt it. That might be the easiest thing to do. So that's going to be backdrop 02, I guess. And then we'll flip it. And that's going to be backdrop 01, I guess. And now you can see it's much sparser. But when we get close to maxed out, it's still pretty close to maxed out. It's not really very faded at all. It might make... There's a lot of things I could do, and I'm beginning to think that maybe I was on the right track with the first thing I did, which is not even the thing I did today, like the thing that I had beforehand. And that was basically just using banded vertical or horizontal bits and creating a grid out of that by simply stretching a texture. Sorry, I'm really not sure how to get the effect I want. I can kind of see it in my head, but I can't really get it to work out here on paper. Well, I mean, there's no particular reason I can't just stretch that. Can I make the thickness even thicker? Yeah, there. So if I were to take that, then what I can do is I can bring it down to, like, say 50%, and then I can just create offsets and duplicates. Except I can't. But what I could do is scale it. I have no idea if this is going to look even vaguely decent. Let's give it a shot. I think it's not going to have enough space. It's going to be too thick. David Goder says, how is the spaceship is doing? The spaceship project, depending on which one you're talking about, I released one and I canceled the other. So I don't really know which one you mean, but this is a diving project where I'm trying to get the holograms to look right, and I can't seem to do it. These visuals are always turning out shitty. Maybe my best bet is to just do it the oldest fashioned way of that's not white. Oh, that's white. So if I just go ahead and create these lines like this, I can always just duplicate them and move them manually. And I could also just do this using math, which wouldn't be too challenging. I don't know if that's a great idea or not, but it's certainly possible. Anyway, if I do it like this, what I can do is I can just offset them. Like that. And maybe that'll do. And then what I can do is just rotate it. Let's see whether or not that even vaguely works. David Gooder wants to know where he can find the released one. I know it's linked on my Twitter page. It should be linked here too. It's just on my itch.io account, so it's like Space Debris. I've got a couple of games on my itch.io account. They're all pretty crap. Yeah, I think that's probably going to do. So there's one more thing I can do to try and punch this up, and that is to use an eraser, a big soft eraser. And just go shoop. Nope, that didn't work. Like that. And that should radically alter when they come into play. It doesn't seem to, though. I definitely get a little bit of it. Let's go ahead and do it a little bit more aggressively. And then we'll rotate and bring that back. I'm not really you can sort of see what I'm going for here, but it's not really working. That right there is exactly what I want, and so is that. But you can see how hard it is to make it work. Tiling does work. So if I were to bring the tiling... If I were to rely heavily on tiling, I think I can probably make this work a little bit easier. Let's go ahead and shrink this down. I don't think I want to use these sizes. So if we change the canvas size to, say, 128 by 128, we can really go ahead and cramp the whole thing down. And the idea here is that we will simply use a very, very soft brush, like that, and then we'll just weigh it in on this side. There we are, like that. We're going to call that Hollow Fade Hors. And then we'll rotate it. Call that Hollow Fade Vert. We can go back over here, and we can use these. Maybe making the big version was just dumb, not something I actually need to do. Here you can see that they take up half, and that's because what we actually need to do is give them a big fat tiling bonus. Even 10 might be a little bit low. Let's try 15 or 20. There we are. And now, well, it's not really very hologrammy. It's very fluid. If we reduce this down to, say, 0.2, no, it's still pretty crap. Let's just change this image because it's clear that this is almost what I want. It's just not quite working. So what we're going to do is we're going to break it into a couple of segments. I'm going to start with a segment over here, which we'll make quite thin like this. And the basic idea is that this segment will fill in first. And what we're going to want to do is create a soft fall off from north to south here. This is in the way. What the heck, we'll do it the other way around. No biggie. Like that. The problem is that I need to tightly control what that value is at the top of the loop. So what I could do instead is I could use a fill. Do I have a... Yeah, here it is. See how we got foreground to transparent here? I can use this fill like this. And you can see how that creates a pulse in the middle, which maybe that's exactly what we want. But the problem is it doesn't go to... It goes to 100 rather than to... It goes to 0 rather than to like 0.5. So in order to actually make this work, we're going to have to fill this in like this and bring this down to 0.5. Like that. And then when we drop these together, that will be our first band. And then we can create a duplicate of that, move it to the side, and then 1 pixel in. And that way we'll get a little stripe there. And we can make that 0.5, make that maybe 0.6. Yeah. And then we can duplicate that, move it off to the side, again with a little bit of overlap. Maybe bring that down to 0.3. And then 1 more. And we'll call that hollow fade vert. And then what we're going to do is rotate that. And that's going to be hollow fade hors. And I think that might get us the values we want. Yeah. That's how I want it. The only other thing I want is we're going to want one of those sets of lines to come in first. So to do that, what we're going to do is we are actually going to lerp the foreground alpha by the current power. So that actually goes into B, not A. And then the glow goes both those places. So here you can see horizontal happens first, and then the vertical. And what that actually is the background gets drawn first, and then the foreground, which makes the perfect sense for later when we try and do text. Yeah, okay. So this is how I want it to look. The only question is whether or not that actually works in the way we've got it set up right now. I might have to change a value or two. Let's take a look. Yoink. Ram. Zoom. Woohoo. All right. I went in exactly the worst possible direction and hit a rock. So you get for following that early indicator too much. It got really pointed off to the side. So this is the thing that we're trying to click on. And if we go towards it, it should highlight with a hologram like that. And you can see it works fine. It's a little bit slow, but we can alter that. So the things we want to alter now are how we're actually discovering this stuff. If we take a look, what we've got is nothing on here that is a script. There must be something here. No? Objective one. Here it is, highlightable object. You can see that the highlightable object has a target capsule mesh. The animation speed is currently set to 0.25. I can easily change that animation speed so that it isn't so slow, and then try again. So if we bring that up to 1, it should go 4 times faster, which is quite a bit easier. The other thing is, though, this gets selected by something on the player that actually tries to check for what is ahead. I just don't remember what it is. Interaction caster, there it is. So the interaction caster, if we go over to it and take a look, is this invisible ball right here. It doesn't have any sort of debug helpers or anything like that, but it does have this object called a grabber, and the grabber is what actually does all of the work. So here in the grabber, it's just a simple mono behavior with a max range that's defined, and then what we do is we say highlightable object nt equals highlightable object get closest. So we find the closest highlightable object. And then we say that if it's not our current target, then we want to change our target and set highlight to true. Then we try and set our grip, but we don't have this part set up, so it should be fine. So get closest has a maximum range, which we specify here as 1. If we pop that up to 1.5, it would probably work fine. This doesn't care what direction we are. It's an interaction caster, but it doesn't actually do any ray casting. It just kind of guesses at what's closest. I think that pumping it up to 1.5 should probably be enough to get it to work. So the problem is that it's located under our neck, and when our camera is like this, we end up tilting. And the tilting causes us to move our interaction point further from where we expect it to be. But worst, the interaction caster is trying to detect where the ball, this glowing ball, is. And if the glowing ball is large, then it takes longer for you to get close enough. So what we actually need to do is we need to get the closest point on the interaction caster rather than, or on the interaction target, rather than just doing it the way we're doing it now. So Control F12 it. So here's get closest, and here we actually do get the closest point on the bounds. So we say if it's not available, then keep going. Then we get the range from the origin to our position, the origin between our hand and where we're trying to get, or our neck. And if we say that if the range is really far away, then just ignore it because we're obviously not in range. If it's not really far away, we do actually use the bounds function here. Get closest on bounds. H is our highlightable object, and bounds is defined. Where is bounds defined? Bounds, there it is. We never set the bounds? Do we manually set the bounds? Is that what we're doing? Oh yeah, it is. That's right. So if we look at the interaction target, oh, it's over there. This interaction target is this objective. This is the highlightable object. And you can see the target is this capsule mesh, and the bounds are the capsule itself. So that should work fine. We get the closest point on the bounds, and then we check the distance between that point and our origin. So that should work. Then we have this dot product stuff where we try and find the best one, and I think this is the problem. We're just going to get rid of that. We're just going to go ahead and return H. Sorry, if this is going to be continue, my bad. This is going to be return H. We don't need any of this stuff right now. So that should free us up, because I think we were trying to do some like directional checking to make sure that we were pointed the right way and stuff like that, but our camera isn't normally that close. We're not normally looking closely enough to detect the sorts of things that... Are you pointing at a different target? No, that's fine. Our camera normally isn't close enough to detect something like exactly which of the 3 things 2 feet from us we're looking at. So our interaction targets shouldn't be that delicate. We should just be able to get up close and then they'll just trigger. We don't have to worry about trying to define exactly where we are relative to them. See? It should just work. And then we click, and you can see we get our scary buddy cam working. So that is all well and good. So the last thing for us to start to do is to actually start to work on the mission a little bit, just to make sure that it feels like it exists. I created some stuff where, you know, there was like a preamble, an animated preamble, maybe some talk about it. But the most critical thing right now isn't to get that preamble working, is to get the basic stuff working. So to do that, we're going to go ahead and rearrange our mission system a little bit. We're going to start with a mission to check out this here, and then we're going to move on to the other missions. We may want to have another talking head that's not our buddy. Mission control, you know. But maybe should we even bother with that? I mean, I guess there's no real reason not to bother with it. We'll just go ahead and just put them in. The only reason I might be a little bit worried about that is because it's a person, and that might not be super cheap. But whatever. So we're going to just pull in a mesh. We only really need the head, but we don't really have a separate head right now. We might create like a head set. So let's go ahead and do that. We'll open up this diver. Call this heads. And basically all the characters that we create that have custom heads will be based on this. So we're in paint mode. Oh, for crap's sake. It's this ancient version where I can't actually figure out how to do anything. All right, so give me a second here. Object mode. We'll just copy that. Create a new don't save. Paste. There it is. Delete this. Save this as heads. Because it has the correct layout, and I don't know how to change the layout, so whatever. And we're just going to delete everything below the shoulders. Oh, got the breast there somehow. Like that. Delete all of these faces. Kabloom! Delete those faces too. They do not need a pair of free-floating nipples. That's a little bit weird. And we're going to delete the hands as well. There's no reason not to. I think we have a better job deleting these hands by simply finding a loop that we like. This one seems like a good one. Hiding it, and then deleting everything on either side. And then unhiding it. There we go. And that is going to be our basic face setup. Now we've got an armature attached, and this armature is crap, so we're going to delete it. We can put in another armature later. Right now we're not going to be too worried about it. The only reason we want an armature is because that makes it a skinned mesh, and it's going to be a skinned mesh in the end. So we want to make sure that that lines up, because otherwise we'll have to really do a lot of redefinitions. So we're going to go and add in some elements for that. Looks like I forgot to grab the eyes. That's fine. No teeth, no eyes. Should be terrifying, just how we would like it, right? So we're going to add in an armature. Yes, that's precisely the size the armature should be. Let's bring this armature under control a little bit. We're going to want to change the armature so we can see it. That should be fine. So that's going to be our armature. We're going to want to just bring up, for the heads, we're going to want a very specific armature setup. So we're going to need a back rig. So we'll just put this bone here. Yeah, that should be okay. We're going to need the shoulders. So we want to make sure our x-axis mirroring is on. Extrude it. Fork it. Boom. And then extrude again. This is probably not perfect, but it doesn't really matter. The point here is we want to be able to do things like shrug our shoulders. So start to rename some bones. This is going to be arm L. This is going to be arm R. Shoulder L. Shoulder R. I actually don't think we need these two, so we're just going to delete them. I think that these would do a little bit better if they were... the problem is I don't actually know where these bones should go. I guess here is good. That doesn't matter. We'll figure it out later. And then we've got this is the core bone. Spine. Then we're going to have like a neck. And the thing about the neck is it's going to be pretty close to vertical. To clean up our head animations, we're going to want this pair of bones to be vertical. That way it won't be confused later on. We may actually have to go in and change it so that it's horizontal, but that's fine. So this is going to be our head bone. And once we have our head bone set up, what we're going to want to do is set up our eye bones. So I guess the best way to do that would be to just extrude out a random set of bones and then detach them. There we are. And then we can just grab these, rotate, scale Z0, move them into position. We don't have any eyes right now, so there's not a whole lot of reason for these bones to actually exist. We're also going to need to have a jawbone, so we'll just do the same trick. Later on, we may revamp this, add, blinking or something, and, expressions or whatever. For now, however, this should be fine. Sounds like the mailman's having fun, smashing something against my door. Yep, it worked. So with that in mind, what we can do is start to have some duplicate meshes here. Here we are. So we're going to call this default head. And then we can just duplicate it. And in theory, it should keep the bone morphs. Let's find out. Yeah, so because of that, we can just go ahead and shift whatever we want to see here. So we just take this default head and hide it. For this default head, we'll make this support team A. And all we really need to do is make them distinct from the rest. So I guess we'll go into sculpt mode. Yes, that is exactly what they should look like. Sculpt mode has a bunch of things in Blender that I haven't really gotten used to yet because it is the new setup. I think that this stuff is all pressure sensitive, so I could pull out my drawing case or my tablet. So where's the smooth? Is it not shift? It doesn't look. Is that smoothing? Yeah, that does look like it's smoothing, doesn't it? Come on. So basically, let's see, what do we got? Draw sharp, clay. Let's go ahead and just give this person some weight so that they don't appear to be the exact same character, right? And then we'll just use the grab brush. One of these things is not like the other. There it is. And we will just adjust the... That didn't work. I pressed S because in every other program, S is change brush size. But in Blender, it's smooth. In every other program, that would not be S, that would be Shift. So right now we're just trying to make them feel a little bit more distinct so they're not mistaken for the same person as the rest of us, you know? And obviously there are thousands of things that can change to make a character more distinct, and we're choosing the dumbest ones just because we're just being quick about it. We don't really care that much. But let's go ahead and make them chunky. That's probably fine. And I think we want to change their brow ridge just a little bit because it's a little bit too gentle. It looks a little bit too much like... Yeah, that'll do. So aside from being eyeless, that's probably fine. We can also change the mouth type, but we'll do all this stuff later. It's not supposed to be a character we care about right now. It's just a testing rig. Pop on into here. Look for our heads. Heads. Drop that in. Take a look. There are heads here. Looks like heads contains all of the crap that we don't want. So in order to make that not suck quite as much, we're going to want to turn off a lot of the import values. We don't need cameras or lights. There we are. So there we go. And you can see how this character is now pitch black, and that's because they're located underneath everything, which means that they are kind of not... They're catching shadow from the huge island. So in order to get that a little bit more under control, we're just going to raise them up until they're above the island. Basic. Here you can see that the material we've got for this character is flat gray, which is a way to make him distinct, I suppose. But let's go ahead and assign him an actual... first off, just hide the original. There we are. Let's go ahead and assign them an actual setup here. Why are these lights still being imported? I told it not to import lights. That's really dumb. Well, whatever. We'll just go ahead and hide all this shit. So here's support team A. That's the character. We're just going to drop in the diver material. Boom. And now you can see that they exist. Now, this character is not catching much in the way of bright sun because this character doesn't actually have... What the heck? Why is the pivot way down there? Oh, you know what? Give me a second. There we are. Better. So, first off, he's facing the wrong way. He's not facing into the sun. Second off, the sun is actually set very weak right now because it's set for underwater. So what we're going to do to give this guy a little bit of an appearance of actual sunlight, we are just going to put a light above their heads. So we're going to want to create a new empty object. Create empty. And then we're going to drop the heads in it. We're going to go ahead and call this support team. And then we're going to put a light inside of the support team. The reason we're not putting it inside of heads is because heads is a strange, very screwed up prefab, and it's going to change a lot, so it makes more sense for us to do it like this. We'll just create a point light, and the point light will get moved to in front of their face like this. And that should give us, aside from the incredibly scary look in their face, that should give us some basic lighting and make them feel like a person. One of the other things we could do is like change their skin tones, but we'll wait on that for a little while because that's all going to be done using material property blocks later. But I haven't programmed it yet, so right now everybody's kind of the same generic pale color. I suppose I could change the color. We don't actually have a skin recolor option here, so I won't. It just, if I'm going to do that, I might as well program it properly. So that should be okay, but the last thing we're going to need is a talking heads setup. The buddy already has one, so we might as well grab theirs. If we take a look at where our buddy's talking heads are, I'm not actually sure where. It's probably inside their head, isn't it? Yeah, portrait cam, there it is. So that's going to be our portrait cam, which should be talking heads. The talking head might be on another object that I'm not aware of. Interesting. I mean, I suppose I could put like a thing in the talking head that has a shout. There's definitely no talking head object. This is the talking head camera that gets used, but it's not the object. Oh, there it is. Excuse me, there it is. So basically, we're going to want to put a camera in front and then use talking heads. It looks like we're going to go ahead and just copy this. The reason we're going to copy it is because of all of these dialog boxes. I guess we could just duplicate it. It's not that big a deal, but we'll go ahead and paste it in anew. If there is a pixel somewhere, let me paste something. God, I hate this. There we are. There is always a pixel that will let you paste on this sidebar, but it's never the same pixel. So this is obviously the wrong camera. Let's go ahead and create a new camera. That's a video player. Oh, there it is, camera. So with this camera, we can move this into position. There we go. Just center him a little bit. To be honest, we should just have like a plane of blue beneath him, but this will be fine for now. So if we take a look at the buddy camera, just to see how it's set up, it's got a much lower field of view that gives the character a different kind of feel. And it has very, very limited clipping planes, which is probably a good idea. Field of view of 24, I guess we'll clone that. And it is on, because I think it gets turned off automatically. So you can see that the narrower field of view gives it a really, really tightly clipped look. That does change the proportions of the head. So I don't know if we'll keep that, but that's the basic idea. With that in mind, we're going to want to point that at the portrait cam here. And then that is not a valid buddy. That is someone else. If we take a look at the talking head, it does have this static talking head buddy. We're going to want to go ahead and keep track of all of the possible talking heads. It's strange how it's really helpful until you want it to be helpful, at which point it immediately stops. So when we have all heads, we just go ahead and in awake. I'm not sure why this is in start. It should be in awake. We just go ahead and add in our self here. And then we're going to want to have it on destroy. My finger stopped working all of a sudden. Just make sure. Oh, we already have one. No, that's the one we just programmed. Never mind. So there we go. That should be all we needed to do. And now it should have all the heads that we want. Just going to make triple sure that that setup that we have is... Yeah, it's going to a render texture, so that's fine. We shouldn't see that face. Yeah, we don't. The only issue here is that right now, that face doesn't actually have a... we're going to call this Captain. So what we can do is we can create talking elements that reference people. Right now we have a talking element called Buddy, but now we can reference people by name. So that's what we're going to do. If we want this mission profile, just grab it, click. This is our mission as we've got it set up right now. We start with something called room 1, right? But we don't have to. We can start with whatever we would like. Right now, the only mystery is called Mystery 1 Mystery. That's the mystery inside of room 1. Let's go ahead and create an intro mystery. So we'll just go ahead and create an empty object. Call that intro. That's going to be, each mission is made out of mysteries. And each mystery, so if we go down here to the mystery, see that the mysteries are set up to allow the elements within to unfold in any kind of order. Once that mystery is complete, it moves on to the next mystery. But right now there's only one listed, so we're just going to go ahead and pump that up to 2, and then we'll replace this first one with intro. So the intro is going to be its own mystery. Just drop that in. Boom. We're going to want to add in a 3D object sphere. And that's going to be something we're going to want to drop onto our base. So God, that looks creepy. I'll never really get over how creepy it looks when you've got a world space texture applied to a scaling object. So we're going to create just a large sphere that encompasses this entire object. And that's going to be our first. So the sphere collider is going to be a trigger, and we don't need the renderer. So the only other thing we need to do is set that up as an objective, which I believe is just called, well, there's a highlightable object, there's a mission objective, and mission scene. So we don't need the highlightable object. We do need the mission objective and the mission scene. The mission objective means that it shows up as something we can click on, and the mission scene means that it plays something that happens after we click on it. So here's our mission objective, and then here's our mission scene. And then we have a couple of mission scene elements. If we come down here into scripts, level design, mission. So we've got this speak, right? Boom. The thing about this speak is it takes a sayer. We can go ahead and have this sayer be captain. If we open up speak, it doesn't really understand this, but we can program that now. So you got this here. So we're going to go ahead and fetch that. So we're just going to go through and find the correct talking head. So talking head dot say, and then we can have them say their name. So that would be a sayer, and then their dialogue, which would be dialogue. And then we can do this part too. Only problem is that doesn't actually exist right now. So we'll go ahead and save that. Then we'll go here. There we are. Just going to go ahead and copy this. Paste it. This is going to just be say, not buddy say. String name, string dialogue. So buddy is a defined talking head, but we don't have a defined talking head. So we're going to have to find our own new buddy. So basically all we're going to do is for each talking head in all heads, if head.name equals name, then this. I could have sworn I actually deleted you. Stop trying to be quite that helpful. And then instead of saying buddy.say, we say head.say. Down here we can say debug.log error person does not exist. That's going to be an error because we're going to be returning null. And if we return null, we end up actually giving a problem since we are trying to assign a we're trying to assign an event to it. So if we return a null value, the event assignment will go awry. So we're just going to go ahead and default to buddy if we can't find anybody else to say it. Stop helping. Thank you. Oh, Sasiri came by. Sorry that I didn't see you. I was focused, and it didn't even occur to me that someone might be saying something in chat. So now that we've got that set up, we can tell it to have someone say something, captain default dialog. And then what we're going to do over here in the mission, drop in intro. Well, we have to wire that up properly. So in order to wire that up, all we really want to do is have that set up as an objective. We could also set that up as an exposition, or we could have it exposit on its own. If we take a look at the science objectives that we've got here, when we interact with them, we do the mission objective complete. If we take a look at what that means, here it is. This should automatically happen. So the only thing left for us to do is to set up a thing that actually causes this sphere to trigger our mission objectives. Siri said they noticed I was busy. Yeah, it's one of those things where I don't get very many visitors, so sometimes I forget to look over at the other screen. So here's our bounds limiter. I think this is what we want. Just drop that in. Boom. The bounds limiter, no, that's not it at all. That's something to keep us from diving too low. So remove that. It's probably in helpers. Collision responder. There it is. So collide only with this. That's obviously going to be just the player. And then when we're collided, we want our mission objective to be complete. Boom. And that should work. Let's find out. So, that didn't work. Well, we've got an extra audio listener. Let's go ahead and clean that up. That was a lot of random spam. For some reason, it didn't try to do anything. Did I just forget to... Hold on. I bet I forgot to set up the... So I'm just taking a look at how I set this up before. And you can see how this has elements on it. I think I want the elements, if it's empty, I would like them to auto-populate. So here in play... if not playing, done. If not current, play. This is a little strange. All right, so play has a lot of different functions. It says if we are current, then we want to remove the incomplete listeners because we're currently the active listener. Siri says that it's an interesting concept. Thank you. It's kind of like a holographic diving game with holograms. Oh, I haven't even shown it to you. Well, let me go ahead and show it to you since I don't recognize your name. So this is probably the first time you've been here. It's a diving game, and I've already gotten to the point where there's some life to it in terms of having like fish and stuff. You are going to be solving various mysteries underwater. It's not going to contain any fighting, although you might get beat up some. But there is quite a variety of things planned. See whether or not we actually make it that far. But if you were wondering, you know, what does it look like? Well, it looks like this. It doesn't look like that tiny little corner that I gave you a view of. Oh, Siri says they meant the code logic. Yeah, the code logic there is, I like the idea of it, but it's a little bit complicated to actually use right now because I didn't ever finish it. So we were going to go ahead and make it so that when we're being told to play something, we want to auto-populate if we don't have any elements. We're just going to leave it out because we'll be able to tell right away. Anyway, if elements.count is still 0, then we have a problem. Debug.log error name cannot find any elements to play. It shouldn't actually cause a problem. We'll give it a warning then, because it will just barf out in the same way that it always has. But we'll want to make sure that we have that value in there. So the problem was that, I think the problem was that I wasn't actually telling it to do anything. So it was just skipping to the next mystery, which meant that the dial got reset, but we didn't actually hear anybody say anything. Yeah, see, there we are. Wow, our captain is not very pretty. All that placeholder stuff is going to have to get fixed up eventually. It's okay. We'll do it piecemeal. So if we take a look at that mystery, this one here, we're going to go ahead and call this base inspection. And we can just go ahead and have this say a variety of things. So go ahead and add more speaks. Speak is, I think, the only one of these we've got. I don't think we have any others at the moment. So go ahead and have this be buddy, and we'll say, it looks like it ran out of power. Nobody's home. And then the captain will say, the solar panels up here were damaged in the storm. And the buddy will say, I guess we need to recharge it. I guess we need to recharge it. Have the captain do it. Find the power port. Recharge it. David Goder is saying that the fish is all programmed with math. Yeah, the fish is fun. It doesn't have any sort of actual animation. It's all shader-based stuff. I've got to cheapen it a little bit if I want to put in tens of thousands of fish, but right now I think it's 3,000 fish, and it's still running pretty good. All right, so let's go ahead and make sure that works before we get ahead of ourselves. Oh, this is a HAB. It's an undersea HAB. So there's a couple of things that we're going to want to do. First off, the visuals are awful. They're just the worst. We can polish those later. But another thing we're going to want to do is the time it takes to spin up that animation is really long. Maybe I'll just make a note of it, but basically we only want that slow spin up for the first animation piece in a conversation. After that, we would like it to move much, much faster. So if we take a look at our pop-up here, Yeah, but it's hab in our dialogue. I might have spelled something wrong. This is hab. Yeah, this is an undersea hab. Are you seeing hub somewhere? Because there's no undersea hub. Mifa has asked if there will be some humor in the game. Yeah, but you know, humor is not my forte, so I think it's just going to be kind of on the. It's not, I'm not going to try and make it a funny game because I'm just not a barrel of laughs, as you may have noticed. So the base inspection here is a very basic setup where it. Yeah, that should be fine. More or less. I was going to go into the faces and make them so they pop a little differently. Buddy controller, player controller, talking head. There it is. So the talking head has an animation system that plays automatically when it pops up. But what we can try and do is have it play a different speed. Well, we'll do that later. We're going to have to completely revamp that whole system. We might as well put it all off and do it all at once. It's short for habitat. It just means that it's a place people live that keeps them alive. So you see space habs. They contain, you know, air and beds and food. There are undersea habs. There's like Arctic habs. If you go over and do research on our dwindling Arctic ice, you will find those are called habs as well in some cases. But a hub is a place you can get a lot. This is technically a hub because everything's plugged into it. But from our perspective, it's a hab. And what we want to do is have an event where the player tries to recharge the hab. And this, or the buddy will do it, I guess. It won't even be the player. But the point of that is that we need to make sure that the player knows that they're not a human. And the easiest way to do that is for them to do something that is definitely not possible for a human. And that is to stick their fingers into an electrical port and recharge the base. I think the best place for the electrical port would be right here on top. Unfortunately for us, we don't really have a mesh for the electrical port, but we do have the option of creating just a generic box that we'll use for now. We can change that later. It's tilted a little funny because it's part of the hab, which is not on perfectly straight. I guess we'll just drop it off of the cap, make it its own thing. There. I see. The whole hab is rotated slightly. That's what the problem is. I guess it's okay. So with that cube, that's going to be our power port. We'll fix that up later to be something specific. Mifa says I should rename my channel to You Learn Something New Every Day. Yeah, except for... Yeah, I don't stream that often. You learn something new once a week. So what we're going to have here, this is the base inspection mission objective. We're going to go ahead and duplicate this and call this base repower. The annoying thing I've got with this is that it's not physically linked to the physical object in the scenes, which means that if I were to move the hab, the mission objectives would not move with them. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I don't have to have them within the object. So I can move the mission objectives into the physical objects, but then it's hard to find them when I'm editing the missions. So there is no winning. So here you can see I've got the option to use the dialogue on objectives. I think I can just go ahead and say that. If I bring this up to 2, I can drop in the base repower here. But the problem is that I don't know whether or not the mysteries currently allow us to do in-order objects. that part's correct. Something is trying to find arbitrary objectives, and I can't remember what it is. Maybe it's just the ring. Let's check. So you can see how the ring has moved and is pointed in a strange direction. That's not what's supposed to happen. My guess is that it's pointing at a different set of objectives, and it's not supposed to do that. So if we take a look at the HUD guide here, there it is. The guide element is currently targeting objective 1, which is in mystery 1. Mystery 1 shouldn't even be active right now, so we're going to have to think about that. But basically the issue here is that when we are trying to get a target, I believe that we just look... It's been a long time since I touched this code. I don't remember how it works. The guide element, is it hard-coded to point at that target? Let's find out. No, it's empty. Something is telling the guide to point at that target, and it should be the mission, right? But you can see the mission, element 0, mystery. So unless the mission is able to point at every mystery, update guide, closest objective, mission objective O in objectives. So objectives is being defined. Here it is. Okay, so it actually goes through all of the mysteries. They're not currently concatenated. Let's go ahead and change that behavior because that's not how I want it to be. I can always create multiple missions. If I want to have a line of missions... So I need to make sure I don't misunderstand what I'm trying to do here. Each of these mysteries is currently a set of objectives, and I basically want to have a cluster of objectives within a particular mega objective within a particular mission. So in order to do that, I do need to have this mission be something that I can stack up. So right now we do it like this. What we're actually just going to do is return mysteries 0 dot objectives. If mysteries.count equals 0, return new list mission objectives there. That should do it. It should no longer point off in a random direction. I'm not sure why it was pointing to that other mission anyway, because that other mission didn't have any of our stuff. But here's the issue. I want the ability to limit it to either in order or not in order as I prefer. So when we get this mystery 0 objectives, we're actually going to want to use a function to do that. We're going to call it active objectives, like this. And of course, we don't have anything called active objectives. So when we go into our mystery here, we have these objectives. We're going to have a public list mission objective, active objectives. And that's going to be a getter and a setter. So public bool strict order equals false. If strict order, then we're going to want to just return the first objective. So list mission objective O equals new list mission objective O dot add objectives 0, return O, and then otherwise that's a 0. There we are. Otherwise we're going to return objectives. There we are. Perfect. So now it should point to only the one thing that it wants to point to. Use collection initializer. What's a collection initializer? Well, it's just a... Can I just use brackets? Is that what you're saying? I can never remember which things C# has. I program in about 8 languages every week, so I can never remember which setup it is. I guess this works. Okay. So we should now be able to get one and then the other. But first, let's go ahead and have this speech go a little bit differently. So in theory, I should have a function that allows the buddy function not found. And then I'll say and then here the captain will say the connected sensors should now be online. Go find them. I could have the buddy Psy again. Why not? All right, so in theory, we should have... Oh, hold on. Siri says, what other languages do you use? Sanstoric says English. Let's see. I use PHP, Ruby, JavaScript, Java, TypeScript, whatever the hell the name of that visual... I don't even know what that's called. SQL, 2 different kinds. So it's just that there's so many different pieces. Did I mention Ruby? I probably did. Visual Basic. Hopefully I don't use too much of that because it's not a visual language. It's just that it uses the visual Microsoft compiler. I guess it's technically probably C++. It's just it's such a strange little tool, you know. I guess I would call it its own thing. It doesn't matter. None of that stuff actually matters. Oh, and HTML, of course, which is actually an annoying language all on its own. I was just checking to see whether or not the base repower was scaled correctly because I didn't want it to be too big or too small. Let's make it that size. So obviously when we actually do this, there'll be like a briefing. It'll tell you to go find this place. There's clearly a problem here. No plot in mystery intro. So exposition here, we're supposed to use a dialogue on the objectives. I was hoping that would mean that it would actually get that dialogue automatically. It doesn't. Let's program it to do that. So here's the objective complete. Here's use dialogue on objectives. So we're going to go ahead and take a quick look here. Mission scene M equals objective.getComponent mission scene. If not M, mission get component to children mission scene. M.play. If exposition contains M, exposition.remove M. That should work. Why did it barf? Oh, that's why it barfed. So if exposition.count equals 0 and it should be objectives.count. If objectives.count is less than 0 or less than exposition.count and use dialogue on objectives, that should do it. So that should be pretty basic. I'm not a web dev. I mean, I do web dev, but I'm a data collection and piper. So I set up a lot of web interfaces for collecting data, and some of them are really, really obscure. I use whatever languages the products use. Now, in theory... Yay! So this gave us a nice, beautiful exception. Update guide. Okay, so really the problem here is that the guide errored out, which is fine. I don't give a shit about the guide right now. The reason the guide errored out is because there were no longer any mission objectives to be found since the next mission hadn't really come into existence yet. So, when did it barf? Here it is. Objective 0. So if strict order, so first off, we're going to go ahead and say if strict order, if objectives.count is greater than 0, then that. There we are. That'll do. That's all we needed. ASP. Yeah, that's what it is. We actually don't have very many people using ASP, so we don't use any very often either. A lot of our development, aside from MySQL and the things that are doing the data analysis, they're all dependent on what the people who are providing the data use. And now, as soon as we're done sighing... Oh, it didn't work. The mystery completed. The intro is now completed, but the mission should now be here. There's a guide element, and the guide element is gone? There's something wrong with the guide element. I'll have to think about it. I've been streaming for a while. I think I'm going to stop. I'm going to go play some Stormworks or something. Yeah, you could use TypeScript for everything if you were a masochist, but we're not going to go into that right now. Instead, I'm going to stop and go play. Thanks for your time, everybody. If you want to stop in again on Wednesday, I run at roughly the same time, and again on every Saturday. So I'm just going to cut everybody off here. Bye.